welcome to the Greenleaf's Gallery and Fantasy of Project Space. My name is Christy Peterson, and I'm the director of the gallery here at Rockhurst. And we're really excited to have you here today, as well as our visiting artist, Patrick McGrath Muniz. Just a little bit about him, and then I'll let him talk about his work. So Patrick is originally from Puerto Rico. That's where he grew up. He came here to Rockhurst from Sugar Land, Texas, and that's where he's been living for the past number of years. He obtained his BFA in Fine Arts from the School of Fine Arts of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and an MFA from the Savannah College of Art and Design in Georgia. And yeah, he'll tell you all about his work. So we do have a little guide in these pockets here. So after the talk, if you want to spend more time closely looking, as every image is just loaded with layers of Christian iconography and symbols from past and present throughout art history. And so there's a lot to unpack and think about in relation to our contemporary society. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'll let Patrick take it from here.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks. Really, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thanks for coming, making your time for this presentation, for the opening. I'll try to make it short. There's a lot to unpack from the work. Obviously, there's so many layers, as Christy mentioned before, but, not just Christian iconography, but a lot of social issues, personal stories, and I'll go over them as briefly as possible, and at the end, this should take like 20 to 30 minutes, and at the end, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So thank you. And I wanted to thank Christy for the opportunity, for the hard work, and the team here at Rockhurst. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I had no idea when they invited me over. It was Father Jose Aponte. It was 3 years ago. And he sent me an email. He used to work here. Now he's in Spain. And he wanted me to show here. And I was like, Rockhurst, where is this? In Kansas City? And I live in Houston, in Sugar Land. Well, it's basically Houston. It's suburbs of Houston. I had to look at it in the map. It's like, wait, is this, Kansas or Missouri? So I was a little confused. And I was, to be honest, a little hesitant and unsure of the why to show the work. But then I heard him out. We had a conversation. And then I talked with Christy. And I felt like the right energy, the right mindset, the right direction. And I'm so glad to have brought my work here. It just came out so nicely. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And this is the first time I've had like 3 shows in a row, solo shows in a row. I've been having solo shows since 2020, the year 2000. It's like every year is like 1 or 2 shows a year, but this has been crazy. Like last year, I had a show at the Taller Puertorriqueño in Philadelphia, curated by Daniel de Jesus, and that was in the fall of last year. Then we moved that show to Evoke Contemporary in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and that part of that show with new pieces, I always constantly add new pieces to every show. That show came here. So just the timing, the logistics of transporting the work from one place to another, it's been crazy, but it's worked out perfectly. Thank God. So I'm very happy about that. And the first show in Philadelphia was titled Arcanas. It was really inspired after the Tarot, which I'm going to talk about later in this talk here. This is my deck, Tarot Neocolonial de las Americas. Some of the imagery in my paintings has Tarot in it. We'll go into it, although briefly, because it's very deep and there's a lot more than that to it. And then after that, I had retablos at the Evoke Contemporary in Santa Fe, and this one is Revelaciones. Revelaciones, which is really more like my personal insights, my own realization after the pandemic, after the Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, many personal events that really hit me at a personal level, many losses, trying to deal with grief and this sense of loss and missing friends and things, my studio, and so a lot of it is in my work, and this is like my own way to cope with those existential threats like climate change that we all have to deal with. So, and it's also really like a profound spiritual insight that has its biblical connotations as well. You will find references to the book of Revelations throughout the work, although it's more subtle. I try not to be too preachy about it, but it's there, and it's something that I really enjoy. And this is the work from the past 3 years. So it's been these are perhaps from 2021, I believe. Yes, that was right during the pandemic. And you have work up to recently from 2023. So it's basically a selection of artwork from 3 years of work. And it's really a call to introspection, mindfulness, and a reflection of the complex interplay of spirituality and modern life, with the apocalyptic forces of climate change, consumerism, capitalism, and all of that unfolding in the work. So a lot to unpack. Anyway, and I feel like the work is really more like a vessel and a mirror reflecting, how our stories are really more related than ever. We're closer together as humanity. At the same time, we're so isolated with technology and social media and all that. So there are commentaries on that, of the disruptive nature of technology and corporations, that I feel we have to address as artists if we want to really be relevant and make a point of where we're going as a humanity, or as a human species. And I feel like the work is also trying to be like a bridge between the seen and the unseen. It's a dialogue with the soul. It's a bridge between past, present, and the individual and the collective. So there are many things here that I feel like I'm trying to put together in a very cohesive way that makes sense to me personally, but I try to make it also relevant to the larger story of human history, which is quite complicated, really. So where it all started, it really started 20 years ago when I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design, and I developed this thesis which was titled iConsumer. At that time there was the iPod, so it was all like, you see the propaganda of Apple everywhere. So I was with the iConsumer, neo-colonial retablos for the consumer age. So what I wanted to do was bring all the Catholic saints and iconography together with all the consumer propaganda, bring them together in these altarpieces in order to comment on how much we have appropriated the same strategies and devices from the time of the conquest and colonization of the Americas into the New World, and it very much works the same way, disseminating brands that are very recognizable everywhere you go, and it crosses the Atlantic and everywhere, and it just becomes a global phenomenon of mass conversion into this new faith of consumerism. So that is really at the core of what the work is about. But at the same time, when I came to the United States, to the continental US, I grew up in Puerto Rico, in a small island, 100 by 35, very small. Everything gets amplified down there, like when you get billboards, consumerism is very loud. It's like Walgreens everywhere, Subways, Walmarts. I'm not talking about Subway, it's Subway sandwiches. For some reason, people love it there. So, and I feel like growing up in the 80s and the 90s in an island like that, where it's right in front of the main highway with farmland right behind us, and it was like having the best of both worlds, but at the same time it was sad seeing all this overdevelopment and these strip malls popping up, and everything changing, and the deforestation and everything, all of those little things I remember, and I carry that with me. At the same time, there's a proliferation of churches everywhere, like with loudspeakers, and we would listen to the sermon to the church right next to us, which was a Pentecostal church, without even having to step out of the house. And it would compete with our MTV, and we'd We were just angry about that, but yeah. And then that becomes part of our conversations. My brother and I would make fun of that, but then you also have the loudspeakers from the car dealers and the political caravans. So everything was so loud. You have to go way back 12 acres behind, farmland, just to be in peace there. I should say I'm half Irish American, half Puerto Rican, but I grew up in Puerto Rico. That's why people might ask, but your name doesn't sound Puerto Rican. Yeah, that's the reason why. But my parents got divorced, and we moved, my brother, my sister, and I, with my mom, we moved to Puerto Rico. That's where I grew up, spent 25 years there. And it was great. I really identified with the culture, with everything, and especially the landscape. And that's why it's so prevalent in the work, and you still see the coastlines and all the work is really informed after those experiences living in the island for so long. It's hard to get over that. Even though I don't live there anymore, I've been living in Texas for 10 years. It's something I still carry within me. It's deeply ingrained. So, and part of the work, besides the personal, as I said, it's also the purpose of uncovering, the colonial roots of the current neo-colonial corporatocracy with all the consumerist doctrines, as I said, tracing its origins to the time of Columbus, which curiously enough, in the time of Columbus, that's where the tarot came to be. So tarot is also a reflection and a statement of Renaissance culture, which was brought to the New World, and I find that quite interesting because it's grounded in the past, but it also looks into the future. And think whatever you might want to think about tarot, because I know I'm a skeptic myself. Sometimes, I have fun with it. I see it as a creative tool, but I see so much potential in the archetypes within it, of how they can be translated in historical terms, social justice terms, and all that, and that's why I use it. And when I graduated from SCAD, from the Savannah College of Art and Design, I felt like, I had the saints, the Catholic iconography, consumerism, but I feel like, that becomes, I get bored after a while doing these so often. And now I need to add more layers to it. That's when I started to research the tarot, astrology, mythology, alchemy. But really at the core of it was the study of archetypes, the underlying unseen forces that are really being expressed throughout all these characters that are here. And it was in 2016 that my mom had a terrible accident in Puerto Rico. At the time I was living in Texas, and she almost died. It was a miracle that she made it out alive. My brother, my sister, and I went down to the island to be there with her and look after her, and thank God she made it out of that alive. But it was really quite traumatic for us, that whole experience of feeling like you're gonna lose your mom at that moment. And at that time, I went into the house and started to dig into my childhood memories and toys and stuff, and I found my first deck of cards that was 30 years old, and it's, wait a minute, that's interesting, okay. And I forgot about that. And my friend Cesar, who is in my paintings, he is the guy who's talking to my ear constantly. He's like this trickster character, my best friend and brother and all that. He was the one who introduced me to the tarot all these years ago. So I found that quite interesting. I brought it with me to Texas, and the following year, Hurricane Maria wiped the whole infrastructure of the island. My mom's house was wiped, the roof flew over, everything was out. My studio, which was located behind, I lost most of my work, 90% of my artwork was lost. So that was a shock for me. And now I'm all I could bring with me was this deck of cards. I should have done a reading, perhaps I've known, but of course it was not going to tell me that, because it's tarot. Think whatever you want to think, but I'm a skeptic about it. But the thing is, I had this must mean something. So I started to work on the tarot, create my own deck. And this first deck that I had with me was published by US Games, and it was the first tarot deck that was introduced to the American public, because this was something that was very well known in Europe, but Stuart Kaplan brought it to the US and made it popular. And I contacted his daughter, Jen Kaplan, and told her my story and that I was doing this. And she says, let's do your deck. So this is published by US Games. So it's my first deck with them. And that's my friend Cesar right there. So he's the fool, because he, in el barrio, in the neighborhood, they used to call him El Loco, because he was always chasing after UFOs with crazy stories about ghosts and sightings and shadows, and we had these amazing conversations of the afterlife and strange things, and he had these weird ideas of, you know, of reincarnation and like the soul, and this guy only got to 3rd grade, but he was so smart. He had like he was street smart. Like he went to prison. He had so many stories, and he went to my studio, and I was painting, and he was literally there talking, you know, and joking, and I had such a blast. And when COVID came, we lost him, and we couldn't even say goodbye or anything. There was no closure. He was like a brother and a son to my mom. Actually, when my mom had the accident, he was the one who took her out of the car. So if it wasn't for him, perhaps my mom would not be alive today. So it was really heartbreaking to lose someone so dear, so close. He was living in my studio at the time of the hurricane. So he was homeless. So he went down up to Florida. He wanted to live the homeless life. We wanted him to help him, but he was like, no, I want to live this life. You know, I want to experience. Because he was that kind of guy, experiencing the world, going out, you know, having fun and enjoying life, living life to the fullest. But then came COVID, and the rest is history. And so that's why the work, you see him a lot in my work, because I feel like I still carry him with me, and his spirit is still there, and that's part of it. The good news is that right after Hurricane Maria, the following year, my son Francis was born in 2018, and he's also in my paintings. He becomes like this symbol, a beacon of hope, of looking forward to the future. And he's also in that painting there, the square painting with the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper shows up a lot in my work now because, of course, after experiencing these losses, you become more reflective of how fragile life is, and you have to really seize the day and do your best to do the most out of the limited time we have here on this earth, which is really fleeting. So for me, those were the turning points. You know, the hurricane, COVID. COVID really was that forced self-isolation that really forced us into deep introspection, and having that time alone with myself, reflecting on all these losses, was really crucial for me to create all the work that you see here of what is really important for me, what is the thing that means the most for me. Because before all these things, you know, climate change, yeah, I dealt with climate change, I dealt with tarot, but these became personal. They became personal at the moment that I found that deck, at the moment that the hurricanes just became stronger. We experienced it. We experienced Harvey in Houston, Irma in Florida, so we all have like shared stories, my brothers and I. Anyway, and also becoming a parent gives you a different perspective of not just life, but art in general, and why am I doing this? What's the whole purpose behind making art? And I feel like really art is an antidote to this intolerable collective amnesia of superfluous, distracted mass media that keeps us distracted, divided, and disconnected from nature, history, and ourselves. So for me, art is that beacon of light that is really trying to open our eyes and feel, you know, have us experience the world through the senses. You know, there's this holy trinity in art that I call it the holy trinity in art. It's really based on observation, which is the study of nature, memory, which is the study of history, your own history, and imagination, which is really the spiritual journey of the soul. But it comes down to memory for me, at least in this work, that I find my personal muse. The muse of memory was called Mnemosyne, and she was the mother of the muses. So after all, that was really important for the Greeks. And I feel like it's still relevant today to remember, to recall. For me, it's like these faded memories are just going to be part of the past. Who knows who's going to remember, but at least I have a moment to immortalize these people that I care for. And I also become more conscious of being more appreciative of the people around me today and living the present moment. I feel like that's the final lesson I really wanted to convey, and also that I apply to try to remind myself constantly. So it's an invitation to explore, you know, and connect our own story with the larger story of humanity, and see ourselves in the same boat. For me, I use a lot the metaphor of the boat, the people on the ship, because we're all in the same boat, no matter where we live. And as we become more prone and accustomed to all these natural disasters and pandemics and technology disruption, these are all things we share. So, yeah, that's really where the work is. That's the direction of the work right now. I don't know what's going to come after this, but right now, feels like the culmination of these 3 years where I've been dealing with all these issues. And death can be symbolic, a symbolic liberation that serves as a guide. That's why that piece there is titled The Guide. I don't see death as necessarily something bad. I feel like it's good to be reminded. It's good to be reminded that things are going to end. What are you going to do with this time allotted right now? What are you going to do about it? What seize the day, right? Memento mori, and remember you must die. So that's a genre from, back in the Middle Ages. Artists used to represent these still lives with the human skull and the candle and all that. And you see a lot of representations of Saint Francis of Assisi, for example, painted by Francisco Zurbarán, the Spanish painters. They used to portray Saint Francis carrying the skull. And it's the reminder that you're going to die. So what are we going to do with this time? And I feel that is really at the essence of it. Time is limited. And we can either spend it fighting amongst each other, seeing how we're so divided, polarized as a country. Life is full of dualities. Nature, civilization, right, left, red, blue, image, word. But in the end, we have to look at all the things that we share in common as humanity. And to make art is to embrace the opposites, to move beyond the illusory binary choices sold to us by the corporation. So when you paint, when you have a palette, you're instantly already in the act of mixing and having a nuanced understanding of hues, values, colors. Nothing is black and white. There's a lot more to it. It's a lot more complex, which makes it more interesting and more beautiful for me. So it is to make use of this full spectrum of the color palette, and through the creative act, that's when you rediscover the hidden archetypes within. That's what this work aims to be. I hope you enjoy this, and thanks for coming. If you have any questions? Yes.
Question. So when you're setting out to start a piece of art, what's in your mind? Because there's just so much in each one, and how do you get started, and what? Just describe one piece in particular or your process.
Well, right now I feel, and it should be like this: art should be first and foremost honest. There could be an issue that I feel could be something that I feel concerned about. It could be political, social, anything like that. But it has to strike a chord at a personal level, I feel, in order to really be honest. How do I relate to this subject? And also be mindful that this is my subjective interpretation of it. So I always start from my own experiences, which I know are limited. I'm aware of that, I'm mindful. There are many subjects and topics that I don't deal with, and I feel like they are really important. I feel like every artist has a duty to respond to those issues that really touch them at a personal level, and I feel like that's where it starts. That's the seed, where you have to really like water that seed, and it's like where this is going. Now I can connect to the larger collective experience of the world, but it starts with your own experience.
All of the work that was lost in your studio, is there any part of you that tries to recreate some of it that was really important to you?
Precisely. Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. The new work. Some of this, like for example, those swords on the foreground on this painting here, I lost all of those swords. I had a collection of swords, and for some reason in my studio, it was not just a hurricane, by the way. It got looted because, of course, it's open, so anyone could go in and I lost a lot of personal belongings, old photographs from family history, from dating back to the late 1800s, old, black and white photographs that I was about to scan. And that hurts because it's like, that's history. You're not going to recover that. What I have is like the images. I remember the faces. But, and I feel like that is the whole point of making art. It's trying to, don't let that memory fade away.
Are some of those faces in these people, some of the faces look really modern.
Yeah, they are modern. They're from previous works that I lost. Many of them were models that posed for paintings that I had in my studio that were lost. So I'm trying to make even better versions of them in order to pay tribute and homage and reconstruct all these lost images. And yeah, that's basically it. Now I'm going full on. After this, now when I get back to my studio, I'm really working deep, because at least I have like photographs of the work that was lost. So now I go back to that as an inspiration. So it becomes a little more self-referential, but it's like, I feel like I want to have that piece back. I'll just make another one, but better, and imbued with all the symbolism. Because before 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I used to paint, but they were very one-liner, just like model posing or landscape, just very, But now the work, I feel like there's a lot going on. It makes it more interesting. So why not reintroduce all of these and now make it more meaningful? Yeah, so that's, yeah. Any more questions?
I'm sorry, I got really late, and you might have mentioned, did you make all your frames as well?
Yes. I make them. Yeah, it's a part I really enjoy. Yeah, I make my mistakes. It's not perfect, but it's something that I really enjoy to learn, to craft, because I feel like it adds more meaning to it. And the fact that it's in an altar piece or in a triptych or a retablo imbues it with a sense of the sacred, And now these personal portraits not just are intimate because of the scale, they're also like in that aura of, they have that aura of spiritual, being part of the spiritual realm. That's why I use that format. Yeah?
How often do you show your work? Are there several shows a year that you do?
Yeah, this was a big, like I said, like I had a row of 3 shows in a row. Now I'm not taking a break because I'm going to my studio, but taking a break from shows and having another show in Houston at Heidi Von Gallery in October, I believe it is. And after that, who knows? I'm gonna keep moving on and making more shows, but it takes time to make work. So shows are a little complicated. Yep.
Could you give us an interpretation of some of the imagery over here in the boat? You have one man bent over holding, it looks like some kind of deer on the back, and then this one on the far wall.
Oh.
The man is holding like a ship's wheel, and I'm just curious what the representation is.
Oh yes. Well, I should mention that. Thanks for bringing that up. If you check this deck of cards, Tarot Neocolonial de las Americas, I was inspired after my trips to Central America, South America, the Caribbean, all my experiences. My wife is from El Salvador. So I tried to put all the characters, people that I met, the flora, the fauna, from Mexico down to Peru and all that into a encyclopedic sort of tarot about the history of the Americas for the last more than 500 years. And many of the paintings are after readings I do in my studio. I first start with a reading, and this, of course, is also inspired after drawings in my journals and things that I've seen, and then I compose the picture out of that. But there are narratives here if you want to have like more a specific explanation of what means what each thing. Because this is just it's a universe. It's a constellation of symbols. Yeah. There's a lot going on, and even myself, I feel a little lost when I add more. So where am I going with this? You know, sometimes like, okay, does that mean? And sometimes people say, oh, you meant this by this? No, but I like that. So if it works, yeah. I mean, that's what makes the work so fascinating. That everyone's going to see something different, and it's polysemic, multivalent, and open to interpretation. Yeah, well, I hope you enjoy the show. Oh, well.
You mentioned your mother a few times. Is she reflected anywhere?
Yeah, my mom is a calligrapher. So sometimes if you see the way I write, that's her. I do have a portrait of her in front of the house, you know, as it was, and she was always telling me like, it's okay, echa pa'lante, mijo. You have to go on. It's okay, leave it behind. You know, it's like, and I take that as an inspiration. Like she was really our pillar of strength, and from her I really learned the craft of writing, the handwriting, and all that. And that's where she is reflected in the work, and I owe that to her.
And this one especially.
Right. That's my mom, yeah. That's good that you pointed that out. That's a portrait of her, and that's me as a child. So I took these old photographs and tried to do a composite, you know, reinterpretation of this Virgin Mary, but it's, you know, and her name is Maria, Carmen Maria. So yeah, so it's like has a double meaning. Yeah, so I try to find sense in everything. It's like everything has a meaning. It's connected. Yeah. And she always wanted to be a nun as well. My dad was in the Franciscan seminar before they met. So and I grew up with when my mom went to work as an English teacher, she left me with my aunt was a Catholic nun, retired Catholic nun, Hermanas Trinitarias, and we called her Titi Sister. You know, so it's like, and I was in that house. I remember I was like 4 years old, but I still remember all the icons, the saints, the images. That was just part of me growing up. So this is like bringing back a piece of home with me. You know, so I guess there's always something. You know, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's really beautiful.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Do you ever have a hard time letting go of something? Painting?
Letting go of the past. That's a tough one. Yeah, the paintings, not really, because I have a whole archive of photographic images, you know, and I keep them as inspiration. But yeah, you have to. I mean, if you make a living as an artist, you have to let them go. That's hard. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Patrick, for sharing your insight.
Yeah.
And I want to invite everyone to spend more time with the paintings. And again, if you want to borrow one of the narratives, they're not for taking home, they're for here in the gallery. Do unpack the symbolism, and also think about his works in relation to our permanent collection, the Van Acton collection of religious art, because there's a really great dialogue going on here.
Like that.
Our permanent collection and Patrick's works. So And we're doing a workshop tomorrow at 10. We're going to make a tableau triptych. So
Very simple.
Space in the workshop. We're not going to do hand built out of wood, of course.
No, I wish.
We're going to use cardboard and some collage materials, but there's space. So talk to me if you're interested in coming. I'll get you signed up.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Oh,
Okay.